friendly reminder, this Powernomics Corporation of America, that's the name of his second book. Highly recommend you all check that out. Buy it, study it, share the thoughts with other folks, tell other folks to buy it. Let's actually start working on enacting this lesson plan. This is not a fiction book, right? This stuff is rooted in history and nuance and context and intelligence. You know what I mean? Get this book, and it needs to be rotated. It needs to be heavily distributed, and it needs to be enacted. So again, this is not some kind of boring history book. It's not just some fiction novel or anything like that. It's just something you pick up and put back down. This is something we read, we study, we internalize, and we act upon. Because the only way black folk are gonna lift ourselves up by the bootstraps is if we enact everything that he says in this book. Because at this time, it's getting pretty dire. I would argue that time is running out.
Welcome again to Connecting the Dots. I'm your host, Dr. Claud Anderson, and today I got a good topic for you. I'm sure you'll be very interested in hearing it because it's very topical. You know, I just got word that the United States Congress has approved the Congressional Black Caucus to host a forum and a hearing on black reparations in America. And ironically, they've chosen some people that are very noted, visible black folk in the country.
Why didn't they choose Dr. Claud Anderson? They didn't choose Dr. Claud Anderson, like the dude that wrote the freaking book on reparations. The dude that sat there in Florida in that church for a good portion of an hour, probably over an hour, letting everybody know just how serious this black situation is, how bad it has been for black Americans. Literally wrote the playbook on black economic success in America. And they didn't choose this man.
But people who 9 times out of 10 have not had the seasoned experience or the educational training or the social economic involvement in terms of job application to be able to deal with these issues sufficiently. This is something that the dominant white society has been doing for many years. They use these individuals sort of misdirect, or what I call rope-a-dope, to confuse the issues and mislead black folk. Now let's go back and see how the history has done this as a pattern. Let me go back as far as I can go back to show you how this pattern.
I'll take that as a no.
Pattern remains consistent, and that's when that confuses blacks and keeps blacks pretty well locked into the bottom line because they never know which way to go or who to trust and what's being said. Now this thing first showed up, let's say, in Africa way back in about 500 years ago. You had European slave traders would come around the African coast, and guess what they do? They would get paid. They'd go down on the beach and wave bright yellow cloth to attract all the African out of the woods and out of the villages to come down and pick up the cloths. So they knew blacks would be attracted to colorful clothing such as red and yellow and green. They would come looking for the clothes or the cloth. And once they got down there, slave hunters had no problem just capturing them all right there on the beach and chaining them and branding them and putting them on slave ships and shipping them out of Africa. That's where that first thing began to appear, a pattern of saying, if we can attract blacks and get them someplace and use misleading devices or individuals who got great respectabilities, like in Africa, we use some of the chiefs to do it or some of the minions to do it, to attract blacks down to the beach. Later on, I found the same thing happening, let's say in around 1818. Religion began to move through the country, and black folk wanted to join the religious movements in this country with the televangelists or the evangelists in general to become more involved in the Christianity. And so the dominant society approved ministers who they felt could best control and attract blacks and keep them based strictly on biblical principles or what they call Catholicisms or learnings that they had learned to be very.
That's why I said earlier the Catholics are a big reason why black folk don't take religion in general, but especially Christianity serious at all. They don't take the Bible serious at all.
Very supportive of slavery indirectly.
Black church didn't do that much they didn't do that much better either, but biblically they didn't do that much better, but the Catholics they kind of got the ball rolling.
That they would work hard, be obedient, and look for pie in the sky. And the ministers did a magnificent job of teaching them that. And
he knew that was funny, man. He knew that was funny.
And the ministers were rewarded. But the dominant society knew, and the slave masters knew, that since black folk had been denied an education, and most of those ministers were not equipped to be leaders for black folk in social economics or in slavery or how to get out of slavery or in politics or how to teach the black folk to form new religions and new social communities. They knew they weren't qualified. They chose those ministers. They selected them intentionally to hold the people in obedience. That stayed pretty true throughout up to about the 19th century. They still were selecting certain kind of blacks to try to be black leaders, even though they knew full well those blacks were not totally equipped intellectually or physically or financially to be leaders for the black community. And so let's jump up now. Let's say about in the 1930s and up through the 1930s and 40s. Again, they said, now what we must do, again, is pick some of the most visible blacks to be the role models and leaders for blacks. And the first thing they turned to, again, and what they used in the history before that, was to pick entertainers. Yeah. And so people like movie stars, they became very prominent blacks.
Entertainers. I mean, from LeBron James, what basketball players in general. So it's a bunch of them. Our music artists and stuff like that. I don't have to name names. These people, they mean well, right? They mean well. They want people to they want to bring some attention to things that they feel is wrong. That's cool. But the thing is, what these people with these athletes, what they lack in is nuance and context, So when you lack in nuance and context, even though what you're saying is true, right, and it needs to be heard, if you don't have the proper nuance, you don't have the proper context, anybody can come in and say anything and completely change the narrative and make you it's only gonna take one time for someone to step up to you and teach you something, make you look like a fool in front of millions and millions of people. That's never going to be forgotten. These athletes and actors and stuff like that, and all these other guys, it's like I said, they mean well, but they need to understand their place. They need to understand what their usefulness is in this economic racism, right? They need to understand that they have popularity. Kanye West is extremely popular. Well, he's kind of he's infamous now, right? But music alone, not all the interviews and all that stuff. Before all that stuff, he was regarded as a very, very talented person. All that stuff, right? I wish somebody could explain to him coherently and effectively why Candace Owens was so buddy buddy with him. She wanted attention for the monetary gain. That's what she did it for. But if Ye truly wants what's best for black folk in America, what he was supposed to do was use his popularity, and this goes for all celebrities. This is just one of the most recent ones. Ye, Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving did that. That's what Kyrie Irving did. So yeah, Kyrie Irving is a good example. Him, Kyrie Irving, and Jay-Z, LeBron James, all these guys. They need to use their podium, their position to garner the attention of the world, right? Because that's what they do best, is gather attention and then bring onto the pedestal somebody that's on the grassroots, right? Somebody that's actually down in the on the floor, on the foundation, trying to build everything up. Bring somebody that's well spoken, that's nuanced, that's well articulate, all of that stuff. Somebody that can exclaim, "Hey, this is a real problem, and this is why." And here's the solutions. Here's what they're gonna try to tell us, and here's the responses to those things. And Dr. Claud Anderson is really that person. And I gotta give Ye some credit. I have to give him some credit. Back in 2020, he actually did tell both Joe Biden and Donald Trump actually speak to Dr. Claud Anderson regarding blacks issues in America. Not blacks issues, but Africans descended of slaves. That's what I'm trying to say. Their response to that was absolutely nothing. They did nothing. So I give credit. I'll give Ye some credit for that. Kyrie Irving was a good example. His idea was to bring light and bring attention to blacks that believe that they are Hebrews, and he did that by way of sharing a tweet. So, but the problem is, Jewish people did not like that, or rather, white passing Jewish people did not like that, and they acted upon it, right? So, but yeah, like I said, so that is the proper use of celebrities' image. That's what they should be doing with their image. They shouldn't be trying to assume positions of power, because they ultimately won't. They're just not nuanced enough. They don't have all the context. Normally, at least, hey, if they're on the grassroots themselves and they're actually making things happen, maybe like a Killer Mike or something like that, then yeah, they'd be cool. I'll give them a pass. You know what I mean? But a lot of the times it's just like they kind of just talking. And they may not know it, but they're actually representing the wrong people.
And Hattie McDaniels from Gone with the Wind. She became a very visible black. They called on her to speak out on race matters. Even though Hattie McDaniels didn't have the education or the background to be speaking out on racial matters, but they chose her to do that intentionally and picked her as being a leader. Following that in the 1930s, here's Jesse Owens, who set a record for being the fastest human being alive.
Oh, yeah.
They made Jesse Owens sort of a leader for black folk and a spokesperson for black people. And they paid him.
So this is, man, so it was actually part of the game, man. It was actually part of it. So I would argue to say that they wanted stuff, that Jesse Owens and the other young lady, that they tried to. I'm not the perfect person for this type of conversation, but I know who is, man. They were like, no, man, we'll give you this money for you to say this and say that. Like, come on now, let's just get with the program, man. Well,
we go all around the country through the 30s and 40s into the 50s, again, as being a spokesperson for black folk. Even though Jesse Owens was a fantastic, marvelous athlete, but he was not equipped to deal with politics and social economics or to try to be a leader for black folk. Joe Louis was used in the same manner. They chose Joe Louis because, again, he was a heavyweight champion in the world, and he had beaten the Germans, that's Max Mallet, and proved himself to be able to knock out some of these what Germans felt was the superhuman beings, the white German boxers. And so they used him and made Joe Louis a hero. Joe Louis went all across America being a spokesperson for black folk, even though eventually he wound up being bankrupt, being a door opener or gambling casinos in Las Vegas. But again, they used it to be a leader for black folk, to speak out on racial issues and racial matters, even though he was not equipped to do it. The same thing stayed true when athletes also went into the areas of entertainment. They started using black entertainers again to be spokespersons, picked up a few ministers to do it again. And they picked up ministers that were very well equipped on religious matters, but they were not equipped on history and racism in America. That even showed up.
They don't want to pick the experts. They didn't want to pick the people that actually spent their lives work. They didn't and it was plenty of them. It was a gang of people digging their noses in books and history books, trying to completely understand the intricacies and the problems of black Americans. But they didn't want those people. They wanted people that were invested their times in other matters. Pretty weird.
In the 1960s, the Civil Rights Movement, when you had a major contest going on, a battle going on between Martin Luther King on one side and Malcolm X on the other side. Martin Luther King was a very, very bright man, very knowledgeable about religion.
Hello, Tisha.
But he was not that keenly endowed in knowledge on understanding race matters in America. And so to white society, he was much more palatable because he talked about being compassionate, coming to being out, seeking better angels, getting along with people, social integration. Well, on the other side, they had Malcolm X. Malcolm X was much more in depth and breadth in terms of race matters. But the dominant society preferred Martin Luther King over Malcolm X. And so Martin Luther King became the great spokesman for black folk. Even though masses of black folk in that particular time was more inclined to go along with Malcolm X, go along with Stokely Carmichael or Rap Brown or the Black Panthers. Most of the blacks of that country in the 1960s were more attracted to Malcolm X than to Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
But the dominant society chose Martin Luther King to be the leader rather than Malcolm X.
Of course.
And that is hell's truth. And let me jump up to recent times. Again, they still continue to pick black athletes and black entertainers or black comedians to be spokespersons for black
comedians too.
Donald Trump has proven to be no exception to that. He figured that out, how to use black folk. Said, if I can't get the black ministers, I'll get a few of them to help me to mislead the blacks or to be what they call a lead cow.
He got some weirdos, man. He did get some weirdos, man. I don't know. Donald Trump is definitely a wild dude, man. Like I said, I'm gonna check out. I gotta check out this platinum plan. This guy, man, he was pretty much. I don't know. It's like I said, if I can be charitable on this situation regarding Donald Trump, which I know is pretty difficult to do for a lot of people, I would just say him like being white, they just don't care about black issues. He's too busy trying to make money. And black issues is actually something that you either gonna have to live through or you're gonna have to perform a pretty hefty amount of research. So Trump was not. He just doesn't care. He's trying to make money. So he's trying to how we get the black people to vote for us. So it's nice that he actually thought about us, I guess, whatever. At the same time, he was also he also was trying to fight against the whole narratives being spun around him being perceived as a racist. There's a whole lot of stuff. He probably tried to ask hey, how do we get the black vote or whatever? And somebody just told him, well, let's just get some black people and let's do what we always do, just get some random black people to endorse us. It don't seem like it worked that way, to be honest with you. Had he had worked with actual experts in this whole black stuff, you're gonna get very different outcomes depending on whom you use to tackle the situation with. Celebrities and people with high positions of power are not necessarily the best people for that.
Back in the slaughterhouses.
Real quick, I would argue that if it was a big corporation, I would say the best people to talk to regarding making change is like supervisors. I would say those should be the people that you should talk to in order to get the best possible solutions.
Put one bell on him around his neck, let him walk up to the ramp into the slaughterhouse, and the rest of them would hear the bell and they would follow suit, go right into the slaughterhouse with the lead cow. They use ministers for that. Well, again, Donald Trump had figured that out, and he picked a few ministers, but in addition to that, he also figured he'd get him a few athletes and entertainers.
Yeah.
And he invited them to meet with him in Washington, D.C. He invited Jim Brown, who's a fantastic athlete, a good-hearted man, a hard-working man who was very black conscious and very concerned about blacks.
Really?
And but at the same time, they brought in Keon West, who was just a rap singer, and then they went and got Steve Harvey, who was a comedian, and set them up again to be spokespersons for black people in terms of dealing with Donald Trump and the political circumstance in this country. And that put them in a very, very negative position because they were ill-equipped to be able to deal with these issues. Trump used them. And so what we have to start learning how to do is, how do we break this cycle? How do we break this cycle? But now again, you got the Congressional Black Caucus going to have
I say the only way to break the cycle is by taking control and doing it ourselves, man.
A hearing on rap issues in this country. But rather than trying to pick the best qualified blacks in the country, they prefer to pick those who will adhere to the traditional thing of maintaining the status quo in black folk.
Yeah. And
that's what you call rope-a-dope. Muhammad Ali used it very successfully back in his days. He used what's called rope-a-dope. He'd be in the ring fighting a fighter, and if people want to rat that fighter out and confuse the fighter, he just simply lean on the ropes and let the other fighter wear himself out, swinging at Muhammad Ali. And once he got tired, then Muhammad then would start fighting back. The dominant white society do that quite often. They let groups come in and try to swing at the white society and making no effect and no impact on them until they wear themselves out. It can be the Black Lives Matter or the marches or demonstration, where they regularly have marches all over the country. Let's march again to commemorate the 1963 march. Let's march again to commemorate crossing the
The only thing that's happening is from all these marches is people is losing money because they should be at work.
PD Bridge down in Alabama, and they go through all these changes. Just wear blacks out. They use all their energy and money flying all over the country, attending these meetings and marches. And now they're going to have these hearings. And now there are a lot of very conscious blacks in America, very well-educated blacks in America.
Yeah.
A lot of blacks that are knowledgeable about reparations and how it should be carried out for black folk.
Yeah.
Now, why don't they choose those people? They're not going to choose them for a very simple reason. They want to choose black people, visible blacks in the country who they got confidence in, are not going to try to change the status quo.
You got it.
And that is a shame. That's been going on throughout history, all the way back to the African coast, and it's still going on now. But what black folk need to do is to say this: we're not going to accept any black person that gets up and tries to be a model to represent black folk unless he can do two or three things. First, he can show us beyond a shadow of a doubt that he has a long history of academic training in pursuing race matters and politics, and understanding the social economic dilemma of black folk, is willing to commit himself to trying to change that. Point one.
Okay.
Point two, to show that he's had enough experience in all levels of government and business that now he's learned some skills in how to finesse the dominant white society and get some changes brought about for black folk.
Big one.
And thirdly, he must show beyond a shadow of a doubt that he's not just there to be a shadow and based on personality, and he's there just to be a rope-a-dope or to try to mislead blacks, to sham them and keep them contained while the rest of the society goes right past blacks and blacks remain a permanent underclass in the society.
Yeah, get leaders that know what the heck they're talking about. Get leaders that are fearless, and get leaders that will stand up to the status quo and smear it completely. Dismantle it. Those are leaders we're gonna need in order for things to actually change turn around for us, And overall, before any of those things, these leaders need to be well learned and well versed in the system. Because, like I said, send a dope up there to try to make change, they're not gonna get anywhere because they're gonna get finessed and trick themselves into saying some stuff that's ultimately going to be used against us and against the entire group, and it's going to completely derail the fight.
That's where we are today. That's where we were about 500 years ago. Black folk are still confined to the lowest levels in this country with a poverty rate that's higher than anybody else. They got the least amount of wealth. They're in a dangerous position. And people like Donald Trump, if he's going to be serious about doing something for black, he needs to quit shamming.
Yes.
And come out and pick some real, truly well-educated blacks that understand what black folk need and knows exactly what to request. They need to be able to help and qualify blacks to a better quality of life. Same thing with the Congressional Black Caucus. They need to.
Yes. You hear that, Donald Trump? Do you hear that, Donald Trump? Because I saw he made some kind of speech somewhere. He made some kind of speech talking about he's coming back and he's attacking CRT. What? No, don't do that. Don't. If you, bro, you were going in the right direction with the platinum plan. Stick with that. Right? If you want blacks, if you want a shot at winning this, you're gonna need black folks' help, whether you want to realize it or not. Republicans do need black folks' help. When was the last time a Republican won the popular vote? Maybe if y'all started changing y'all narrative, start changing y'all your viewpoints, and stop. I mean, not even just what am I talking? Maybe if y'all just stop freaking lying and stop being willfully ignorant about the black struggles and actually start embracing the truth, you might be able to get somewhere with black Americans. Because we going through the same dog crap with Democrats, and I would love Republicans to remain competitive in the political party. Because if they're competitive, that means Democrats have to also be competitive. Last thing we want is a monopoly of politics. Americans don't need that. We should not ever want that. We want both parties to be competitive, so they both try to fight for our attention. And at this rate, Republicans are going to be wiped off the face of the earth.
To quit shuffling and jiving too, and pick some very seriously well-educated blacks in this country to come to Washington, D.C. and lay out a very comprehensive reparation plan rather than shucking and jiving and trying to maintain the pattern that's been going on for 500 years. That's my comments and my commentary this day on reparations and how blacks have been misused and abused and to mislead their own people for 500 years. Yeah. Have a pleasant day. Keep the faith. See you next week.
Yes, sir.